This is about 3 ghost stories. Something put me in mind of the English Gothic novel, with the forbidding castles and the dark, wind-swept moors, and virgin governesses tossed into scenes of wild abandon and furious passion. And when I added ghosts to that bizarre mixture, I suddenly came up with a cluster of 3 books. Spoiler alert, here come the plots. The first is Turn of the Screw by Henry James. I believe it was written in 1898. James, an odd duck, was apparently very much taken with ghost stories, the far reaches of what the mind can conjure, and he produced a little horrible beauty with this one. It's provided limitless fodder for scholars for over 100 years, with no end in sight. It has a governess taking care of a young boy and girl on an estate where 2 of the help were lovers, but now they're dead. And she begins to see them furtively as ghosts, and she is convinced they have come back for the children. The story ends with her grabbing the boy and hugging him, protecting him from the clutches of the male ghost. She succeeds at that, but when she inspects the child in her arms, he is dead. The question that baffles the academics is this: are there ghosts at work, or has the governess lost her marbles? James, a difficult, highly nuanced author for sure, plays that game all in shadow, to the point where the ghosts are as real as her madness. In any event, it ends badly, ghosts or no ghosts. The second book is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. It was written around 1938, and it was a huge success. Alfred Hitchcock directed the movie, which Hollywood tried to pass off as an exquisite romance. Apparently, Hitchcock must have agreed to leave out a detail, the murder, which I would have thought was his main interest in it. A young woman impulsively marries a widower, and they go to live on his estate, manned by Mrs. Danvers. Mrs. Danvers extols the virtue of the first wife, Rebecca, clearly inferring that the second wife is no match in any way. Rebecca is the ghost in this tale. Mrs. Danvers goes so far as to invite the young wife to leap out a window and die on the rocks by the sea, rather than struggle on as a poor substitute for the glorious, dearly departed Rebecca. There is a nasty bit of business with a dress, which upsets the husband, and then a search for boats wrecked in a storm turns up the boat that sank and killed Rebecca. The husband opens up about the woman who so thoroughly haunts and dominates the estate. The marriage was most unfortunate, and he despised her. She was shrewd, selfish, manipulative, and unfaithful. She told him she was pregnant with another man's child, who would be his heir, and in a rage he shot her and staged the boating accident. He's sure the authorities will discover his deed, but the investigation reveals that she was not pregnant, she was dying of cancer, and she goaded him into shooting her so she would not have to endure the long and painful suffering. The final verdict is suicide. On the way back to his estate, he sees a glow, smells smoke, and realizes everything has been destroyed. Rebecca is like Moby Dick. She takes everything down with her. The third book, written in 1945, is The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, also known as a movie. A widow goes to live in a cottage with her 2 children. The trouble is that it belongs to a ghost, a crusty but harmless old sea captain. He was reported a suicide, but he tells her he died in an accident. She needs money, and he comes up with a scheme to get it. He will tell her all his seafaring stories, and she will write them down and sell it to a publisher, making enough to buy the cottage outright. As he does that, he falls in love with her, but she falls for an author of children's books, so the captain withdraws, putting the notion in her mind that he was just a dream. The author of the children's books turns out to be a scoundrel, married with a family. The woman settles into the cottage and raises her children. At the end, as she is dying, the captain reappears and calls to her. The young spirit of her life slips out of her failing body, and the two leave the cottage, bound for another world, together at long last. So in these 3 books, we have a horror story, a mystery, and a romantic fantasy, proving, I guess, that following their author's intentions, ghosts are rather nimble and can cover quite a lot of ground.